everybody. Welcome to the post-Champions League final episode of the StattoJoe podcast. I'm StattoJoe, and I'm joined by the enigma Luke Sherwin. Welcome.
Hello, this is crazy. I don't know why we've got Man City 0-1 Chelsea down there. Whenever this is a fact that Chelsea have just won the Champions League final. Like, you should have scrolling along the bottom, Chelsea are champions of Europe. Something exciting like that, Joseph.
Let me edit it here.
Because Chelsea have won the Champions League. That's nuts. It's crazy. Game finished 1-0. A very exciting game, actually. I really enjoyed the game. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as that, but I thought both teams came out kicking. There you go, slightly better now along the bottom. Chelsea came out kicking. So did Man City, and it was a really good game of football. Joe, you and I watched it together just online here. What were your initial thoughts?
It's the best low-scoring, low-shot game I've ever seen, I think, in terms of there were very few chances. There were, when you think about it, there weren't that many clear-cut chances, but as a game of football, it was absolutely outstanding. Both teams gave it their all from the very start. We saw a very quick start. The game plan that Tuchel brought today was just exceptional. And, fair play. I think ultimately on balance, the better team won. Certainly Chelsea's passing was very, very good, I thought. Defensively, really great. Neither team looked really threatening at all a lot of the time, but I thought that of the defences, Chelsea looked sturdier for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think that comes down to how they set up. So if you haven't seen the game or just are catching up or whatever, I'm not sure what position you're in. But Chelsea set up with their 5 at the back or 3 at the back, whatever you want to call it, with wing backs. A good system that's worked well for them over the last few months. Apart from the FA Cup final, didn't really work then. And in a few games recently, like they lost to Villa and they lost to Arsenal, they set up with 3 at the back: Thiago Silva, Rudiger, and Azpilicueta. 3 experienced players, exactly what they needed in this sort of situation, alongside Mendy and Nets, who is the first African goalkeeper to play in a Champions League final. So that's quite an exciting thing. And Carl's put in the chat there, Kante for Ballon d'Or. Do you know what? I'll give you that because it's been really good. And Kante and Jorginho set up in front of the defence with Chilwell and James, and with a front 3 of Werner, Havertz, and Mount. Going into the game, Joe, what did you think of Havertz, Mount, and Werner as a potential 3 to face Man City?
I always knew he was going to play Werner.
Yeah.
And I knew he was probably going to play Mount.
Yeah.
I think I was surprised that it wasn't Ziyech. Because Ziyech played very well against City a couple of weeks ago in the Premier League. So I was surprised by Havertz's inclusion. Obviously, now, totally justified. He got the goal. But I think for me, I almost would have put Pulisic and Ziyech over Havertz in terms of who he would play. So,
okay.
I mean, maybe I don't have a lot of football. Maybe my football knowledge for this game is really poor, but that was my personal feeling anyway.
So did you think a more wing-based play probably would have worked?
Say it again, sorry?
Did you think a more wing-based play with Ziyech and Pulisic being more out-and-out wingers to an extent? Pulisic definitely, Ziyech a little bit. Do you think wing play would have been more beneficial potentially against this Man City team?
Well, I just thought because they had played Ziyech in the Premier League, and I think he gave them bother, and I think that was where I was coming from with that idea. But when you look at the City team, then, and this is probably going to be one of the biggest talking points coming off this game, is City's team selection. I think actually it ended up being a stroke of genius. Now you've got to wonder, was Tuchel playing tactical chess? Did he think that maybe they wouldn't play holding midfielder, and so his plan kind of worked? I don't know.
I don't think his tactics would have changed too much, Tuchel, regardless of if there's a holding midfielder. Gundogan tried to play that sort of formation, that position. Thanks, Katie, in the chat. Thanks for comments on my hair. I think it's personally fantastic. Um, but that brings us on nicely to Man City's formation. They started with a 4-3-3 going into the game. I wasn't sure what to make of it. I wasn't sure why has he picked five quite attacking players, and Gundogan, who notoriously has scored quite a few goals this season. He was going for it against this Chelsea
Oh,
defence
Flippy really was.
with what looked like Foden, Gundogan, and Silva in midfield, with a front three of Sterling, Mahrez, and De Bruyne. A back five, very ordinary for Man City. So going into the game, I thought we were looking at a very even possession-based style of game. Both teams would be looking to have a lot of the ball, and they would look to have a lot of shots on goal.
What's the
Wow.
shirt? Wrong shirt. Well, look, Newcastle haven't lost this week, so I had to wear the shirt to kind of advertise that
Well,
fact. You know?
in fact, a kind of Newcastle player got named Premier League Player of the Month, so that's
It's true.
impressive all the
Had to
same.
celebrate.
But
Had to
yes,
celebrate somehow.
we got into the game then, and did anything surprise you at all, Joe, based on how the game unfolded, especially maybe in the first 10, 15 minutes?
So I thought it was going to be a really cagey start. I actually thought the first half was going to be extremely cagey. These games, these big finals, always tend to be. But they were out. They were out of the blocks straight away. You know, they were flying in tackles. Passing was quick. End to end football. We were commenting, saying to each other like, "This game's been class." Like within the first 10 minutes. But I mean, I think I just want to quickly point out that I don't think Sterling did anything when he got for his selection, and B, I think not playing a defensive midfielder has really hurt City.
I don't know
You
if it
know,
has though, because
well,
I
we'll
think
get into that.
Guardiola went into the game. Guardiola went into the game thinking Chelsea's attack isn't amazing. You know, they don't have a striker who can score goals. We saw that in the first first half with Werner, who missed quite a few chances they probably could have taken. The question here: do you think Guardiola will ever be able to win the Champions League at City, or do you think he'll be let go first? I personally can't see the City board ever sacking Guardiola.
It's more likely that he would leave
Yeah.
before they won the Champions League rather than being let go. I think would be the way I'd see it.
Yeah, I would agree because I think Guardiola will continue to compete on a league basis and continue to win the League Cup because that's what he does. Maybe try and go for the FA Cup to add to the collection as well might be something to do. But getting to the first European final for Man City is a big achievement. Despite what people say, despite how much money that they've spent, it still is um, quite an achievement for them to get to the final. We know it's cup competition, anything can happen, so fair play to them. In the chat here, Jacob's just suggested that he maybe will end up at Barcelona. I could see that happening maybe
There's potential.
a few years down the line, but I don't see Guardiola going to Barcelona while they're in the current situation that they are at the moment. But yes, the game started off. The first 15 minutes were exciting. It was end to end stuff. Chelsea would go up one end, and then City would go straight up the other end. And there were a few key talking points, maybe from the first half, and a few things that happened. Joe, do you want to maybe talk us through the big chance for Phil Foden?
Yeah, I actually think this almost has the same level of importance as Chelsea's goal. I managed to cheekily go on Twitter, find the highlight, and get a still of this block. Now, for me, this block from Rudiger is pretty much 50% of the reason Chelsea won tonight. If we're going to take moments, this block here, outstanding. The photo doesn't even do it justice because where he came from. Basically, City played some excellent football. Kind of had got through Chelsea. Foden looked to be clear through, and Rudiger slides in And with an look at look at how perfectly placed that block is. Like he's not Phil Foden isn't scoring no matter what he tries to do there because of the position of Rudiger's foot. But that was just a piece of excellent defending from Rudiger, which ultimately for me I felt really kind of gave Chelsea this massive mentality. Then made them go out to go right. We can win this.
Yeah.
That block was massive, instrumental. I think.
I thought it was quite interesting because for me, after that chance, I was like, "Oh, City are making opportunities here. City are making a good few chances in and around the box. They have potential to score because Rudiger can't do that every time. That's a once in five challenge.
Mhm.
So I thought City would then go on and maybe score a few or have a few more good chances. But after that point, Chelsea kind of took over. Um, they kept going, they kept passing, and they kept pressing, and Chelsea kind of controlled the ball a little bit, I thought. Um, one thing that was probably the main story for Chelsea in the first half, at least in the first 40 minutes, was Timo Werner's favourite position,
Oh,
which is what, Joe?
offside. How annoyed was I getting? Look, how annoyed was I getting? We were watching this game. Like
Yeah,
it's stupid stuff. Like whenever he's miles offside in situations where he doesn't need to even be miles offside. Now, I do understand the tactic of if he kind of sits on the shoulder, sits offside, he can maybe catch the defense out a couple of times if he,
yeah,
gets in. Problem is, Timo Werner's too lazy. So often he's just constantly offside. I said to you, I don't know if you noticed this, but I was saying to you during at the very start of the second half, Werner was offside, and Tuchel was like screaming at him, properly
yeah,
screaming at him, and then brought him off very quickly afterwards. And this whole Werner living offside, he got a 5.8. He was the worst performing player on the pitch this evening. Um, he was offside, officially offside twice. However, when I say that he was offside, there's many times whenever the ball kind of was near that direction, and you'd see him kind of slowly stroll back. Yeah, madness. Also, this is the quickest trophy presentation I've ever seen in my life.
yes. So we are recording, obviously, while the trophy is being lifted. Right now, as Blackwood is lifting the trophy, and we have it there. Chelsea have won. Thiago Silva at the back, limping a little bit because he's hurt from the game. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Mikey. There is no need for it from Werner. He's enough pace to beat the defenders. But confidence is the big thing. Wednesday night we saw a keeper who wasn't confident and couldn't save a penalty to save his life.
Yep.
Tonight we saw a striker who wasn't confident and doesn't back himself to beat a defender with pace. He doesn't back himself. I don't think the other players in the Chelsea team back him either. I don't think Mason Mount will play the same type of ball through that he did for Havertz for the goal to Werner because he doesn't see Werner making those same runs right now. Werner doesn't back himself, and it's a real double-edged sword there in that the
Yep.
Chelsea players don't want to play it because they know he's probably going to be offside, and Werner doesn't have the confidence to make that run and try that risk despite being offside so many times. And that then obviously segues nicely to the goal. Joe, you have a wee image there, I believe, of the pass that Mason Mount plays through for Havertz. Joe, what are your thoughts just looking at this picture?
So we're kind of on a bit of disagreement on this, I feel. So I
Yeah,
said to you that I felt that if a holding midfielder was playing here, this pass would never be able to happen because somebody would be covering that space in the middle between Werner, who's on the kind of the top of the screen, and Havertz, who's running through. Um, the ball was exceptional. The weighting of the pass was just spot on. Um, got to give credit to Havertz for making the run, and then Mount obviously for spotting the pass. But I just felt that this City defense very very exposed, and they were very fragile for a lot of the game. Um, and even though City had 60% of the ball, Chelsea were the team who always looked more likely to score. I
yeah,
felt, but it was cases like this. Chelsea, and we've spoken about this before. Look, Tuchel's come in, and his main focus has been defense to firm up that Chelsea defense. They were conceding far too many goals
yeah,
under Frank Lampard, and basically he came in and he's totally focused on that defense. He still needs to work out the attack because the attack aren't firing on all cylinders. But the main thing is he's winning. He's just won the Champions League with an attack that are not completely 100% with it. And it's individual moments like this that kind of set them apart. I said to you while we were watching the game, kind of felt that Ederson could have done better with that situation because the ball kind of went through his hand almost. But, great pass, great composure to finish it off.
Yeah.
And is this the arrival of Kai Havertz? Maybe. We'll need to see what happens next season.
Quite possibly. I think Pep Guardiola will have been saying to Ederson at halftime, you could have been doing better, son. So, yeah. But I think the pass played by Mason Mount. The pass played by Mason Mount, I think, backed up the fact that he has a really good chance of starting for England. I think Mason Mount had a really good game at times, although saying that, I thought he was played out a little bit towards the end. But I thought he did play well, and that pass through is exceptional. And that's what Chelsea do well at the moment. Their attack, as you said, isn't unbelievable. But what they do is counter-attack. They counter-attack relatively well. And that was a prime example of that. And I think they did very well. Mason Mount playing that cracking ball through to Havertz. It's a hard one to know about the holding midfielder situation because if Fernandinho's there, he has a bit of experience. Even Rodri's a very good footballer. But are they in the right position because they've been going forward? It's hard to know. And I think it's just a really good run and an exceptional ball through to Havertz, who kind of finishes, but doesn't really at the same time. Takes a shot, gets saved, but thankfully bounces through to him. I like Kai Havertz. I think he's a good player. I think he will grow into it. I think he's looked better under Tuchel, but still just needs more experience. And winning a Champions League will do him the world of good. So fair play. So that basically took us to half-time. What were your thoughts, Joe, at half-time? What were you thinking both managers might do? Was there anything that surprised you at all by what happened in the second half?
I was convinced City would score in the second half because they had to. And I thought it was going to be a bit of a batter in the second half. It wasn't that bad. But just to bounce on your point about Chelsea's attack, on paper, Chelsea's attack is fantastic, but as a unit, they haven't worked together. So that's like we're not saying that they don't have a great attack because they do. They've got one of the best in the league. They just haven't worked on that attack, and that's the main issue. But yeah, at halftime, I was thinking to myself, right, this is the game, because the game in the first half didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. I've been very adamant that this was going to be a kind of a 65-35 possession game, really. I felt that City would dominate possession, and they dominate possession in Chelsea's half, but that actually wasn't the case. Chelsea had a lot more of the ball in City's half, I felt, than City had in Chelsea's. So at half-time, yeah, possession was very, very even in the first half. City had 52 to Chelsea's 48. But then the second half, 68-32 is exactly what I expected the game to be in general. Chelsea's been a great counter-attacking team this season. Certainly since Tuchel's come in. And I just thought maybe they would try something different, to be honest. I'm surprised that Raheem Sterling was on for as long as he was. Because I thought he was really poor.
Yeah. I think all things considered, after the first half, the clearly two worst players on the pitch, Timo Werner for Chelsea and Raheem Sterling for Man City. Yep. So I kind of expected changes slightly sooner because Werner went off in the 66th and Sterling only went off in the 77th. I really didn't expect either of those players to play as long in the second half as they did, and neither of them did anything really useful until they went off in the second half. I should say, actually, in the first half, Thiago Silva getting injured, I thought would have quite a big influence in the game because he's very experienced. He knows what he's doing and shores up that defence. But I thought when he went off and Christensen came in, you saw the experience and the quality of Rudiger come through. I thought Rudiger Rudiger did really well. Azpilicueta did really well, and they showed their class and experience there, and that was very helpful. James had Sterling in his pocket all game. Do you know it? I don't see it like that. I see it more of Sterling tied both of his boots together before the game, rather than he was in James's his pocket. I feel like it was very much a Sterling inflicted thing. Um, that's fair. Sterling is going to get in his car, look in the rear view, and James will be sitting there. James had a good game, I think so, but I think Sterling almost made him look better than he actually was tonight. But there were a few times where he did very well to nip possession back and hit Chelsea off on the counter. I expected City to come out firing, but I think the 60th minute was almost the killer for me. The 60th minute, Kevin De Bruyne runs into Rudiger. Rudiger tactically fouling.
Yep.
And the end result is that De Bruyne has to go off injured. Joe, how do you think that affected the game?
Well, I thought De Bruyne had actually been playing pretty well up until that stage. He was probably the person who looked the most threatening when on the ball, attacking. We were both a bit confused about the nature of the injury, mainly from the point of view of it didn't look like much from the perspective of the charge or whatever, but there was images of him about 20 minutes after he came off, and he could barely walk down the tunnel. So I don't know if it's a bad concussion. What does this mean for the start of the Euros, if anything? Maybe it just means he won't be able to train until the Euros start. One of those things. He has to take a week off, a couple of weeks off. I think it made a massive difference. It made a massive difference because I think the plan would have been potentially to have brought Jesus on for Sterling, but then they had to bring off De Bruyne.
Yeah.
So Jesus came on for De Bruyne, then Sterling was still on the pitch. Sterling was a passenger, as we talked about before. I think maybe that affected a lot of the game plan. I think also they would have been hoping for bring off maybe Sterling and who came off for Fernandinho? Bernardo Silva. Bring them off. Bring on Fernandinho and Jesus, and then you're playing with Jesus and De Bruyne and Fernandinho. I think it would have been a massive difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I think Gundogan, Fernandinho, and De Bruyne as your midfield three with Foden, Mahrez, and Jesus up at the top probably would have worked relatively well. But then whenever De Bruyne went off injured, all creativity went down to Phil Foden. You know, a young player, never played in the Champions League final before. It was all on him. I think the creativity, because Sterling was doing nothing. Mahrez had an okay game, but never really got into it. Had a few decent ball crosses into the box. Other than that, didn't really look himself. Didn't look anything like the semi-final performance from Mahrez that we saw. And so Foden, I think, felt the weight of that responsibility. He a few times had good opportunities, but Chelsea just knew that they could sit back. You know, it's such a blessing to be able to take off Mason Mount for the last 10 minutes and bring on Kovacic to play alongside Jorginho and Kante. Like three defensive players who are happy just to sit back, tackle well, and give it to quick boys up the top who can counter attack. And so we saw a real slow game in the second half. It was very different from the first half, but not bad at all. City had 68% possession in the second half, but ultimately only had 4 shots with 0 on target. Not a single shot on target in the second half, I think, really cost them, despite bringing on Jesus and Aguero. Is it worrying for Man City and just Aguero in general that Jesus and Aguero couldn't manage a shot on target?
They need to be getting a striker in the summer. Do you know what? I hate to say this, but I think Harry Kane would be perfect at City.
Of course he would. He'd be perfect anywhere.
Especially at the end of that game, they were lumping throw-ins into the box, and pretty much every time Chelsea were like outwinning, like beating them in the air. Whereas you have someone like Harry Kane in that box, could have been a different story. Tactically, at the end, obviously you have to get the ball in the box, right? kind of all wrong. You don't have the most physical players in that box when you're throwing the ball in, and you're going up against one of the best like defenses in the league in Europe since Tuchel's come in. Technically a bit wrong. Phil Foden was marked out of the game, I felt, and so didn't have an opportunity to play. And I think that shows the level that he's at, that they feel they have to mark him out of the game in some ways. As
Yeah.
Mikey says there, it felt like if they had another hour, City still wouldn't score. Kind of have to agree with you, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it never really felt like City were going to score, even in those last 10 minutes, whenever it was literally like attack versus defence. Chelsea seemed quite comfortable.
Yeah, I felt like we got to a stage in the game in which Man City almost lost their belief that they could score, and it was looking like the only way they could score was a worldie from 30 yards
Mhm.
or a deflection or something like that. It didn't look like they were going to pass their way through the defence. It didn't look like they were going to be able to counterattack because Chelsea were so deep. I think it looked concerning if I was a City fan. But yeah, I think a striker would be really helpful to let De Bruyne do what he does best, and that's play the balls through. You know, Harry
Mhm.
Kane said recently in an interview that he would love to play with somebody like De Bruyne, and there's a reason for that. It's because he's exceptional. He's exceptional at attacking midfield. He's exceptional at chance creation. He's not exceptional at finishing. And so letting him drop into that sort of creative 10 area with a Harry Kane in front could be really, really exciting
Mhm.
for Man City. I think I saw rumors earlier that Mahrez and Sterling were both available this summer. That City were potentially going to let them go because they have enough wingers, and potentially we're looking at a Grealish move, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if those
Oh, I
rumors
think I
have
saw
any. I don't know if they have any grounds whatsoever. But if you could get any money for Sterling, I don't know if that's a bad thing necessarily. But that's probably another point altogether.
Do you know where
And so
Sterling would
Chelsea,
actually maybe be good at? Do you know what we were
yeah,
talking about Spurs?
yeah,
Don't think Sterling would do okay at Spurs. If he's not quite at that world class level anymore, but he could still be a good enough player at a rebuilding Spurs to do a job there.
I do think he's still world class. I just think again his confidence is gone.
Mm.
Last season under Pep, he was great. Like he was really good. And so I think there is potential there in Pep, and it was it. Pep got the best out of him from when he's come in, and he's had some really good seasons. But I think
Mhm.
you, I think all the players need a break.
Yeah,
Like there was very
Euros.
very little time at the end of last season, and then because of COVID and everything, and this season's been a hectic schedule. I
Mm.
think the Euros is at the worst time possible from a player's perspective. I'm buzzing. I can't wait. I'm excited. Um,
Yeah, same.
but for the good of the players, I think the Euros probably should have just been cancelled and then let them have an actual summer.
Mm.
But hopefully they will get a bit of a break at least for a while. Um, Sterling, I could understand them moving on, like he says, but Mahrez seems like a strange one for them to get rid of, unless it's to fund a Kane move. Well, that's the thing. Um, if they could get decent money for Mahrez from someone like PSG, someone like Real Madrid, it wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily to do. Um, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it all unfolds. But
Mhm.
yes, Chelsea won the game. They held out a 1-0 victory. They only had 2 shots on target the whole game. Pulisic did have a really good chance though to potentially score, which he probably should have put in the back of the net
Mm.
from a good bit of play. 40% possession in the end for Chelsea, which I think is significantly lower than it felt like during the game.
Yep, agreed.
But Joe, let's see. Who would you pick as your man of the match for the Champions League final 2021?
So you asked me who my Luke Sherwin man of the match would be.
Well, I'll give you my actual Luke Sherwin man of the match, but who do you think my Luke Sherwin man of the match should be?
Okay. I mean, in a game like this, it's very difficult to not just give it to Kai Havertz
Yeah,
because he scored the goal.
yeah,
So I mean, like I would say that maybe Kante was the best player on the pitch today, but I think because Havertz scored the goal, you almost can't not give him man of the match.
yeah. Well, let's have a look and see whether Kai Havertz deserves it. Let's have a look and see if Kai Havertz deserves man of the match. Looking at Kai Havertz stats, we are the StattoJoe podcast at the end of the day. 90 minutes played for Kai Havertz, 1 goal scored, shots on target, just the one. I would personally argue that there was two. I would argue that he took a shot before he then took the
No,
shot
no,
to
that
score.
was just him trying to go past the keeper. I think. I don't think that was a shot.
I think the heaviness of it was more than a touch. But anyway, dribbles attempted 4 with only 2 successful, so 50% dribble success. Touches 46, possession lost 11 times. Passing, he had 75%
Oh
passing
dear.
accuracy. Bit low
Oh
for your
dear.
liking, but
No,
21
I'm
out
not
of
happy.
28. 21 out of 28 isn't bad at all. And other than that, he was fouled 3 times, cleared the ball twice, tackled 3 times. He had a decent enough game, but
2
I
big
would
chances
say
created.
if he didn't score a goal, he's probably sitting on like a 6.5 average rating.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually deserves man of the match, but he did score and probably is then because of that the highest rated player. That brings up an interesting point. Before I get on to my Luke Sherwin man of the match, Chelsea utilised a long ball tonight
Mm-hmm.
in certain aspects that I almost forget that they do at times. City tried it as well a few times, but to less of an impact. What do you think about the diversity that Chelsea showed in going forward, and will it work if they just get a good striker?
It has to work because the unpredictability. Now, it definitely wasn't a shot, by the way. Look, that was him trying to go past the keeper.
I disagree.
Sorry, it just came up on my screen there. But so I think Chelsea's unpredictability is what makes them such a difficult team to beat. Um, they don't do the same thing every time. I mean, I was worried for them because they were coming to this game in a very, very poor run of form. They had lost to Leicester in the FA Cup final. They then lost to Villa, in really a game that they needed to win. They got away with it, really, by getting a Champions League place. But then they came here and they won. And I think that the style of passing, the way that they seem to change their press, I don't know if you noticed that the way they
Yeah.
changed the press of the ball was very interesting. There was times where they would, as soon as the ball came into their half, they pressed it like mad. Other times they would sit back, let City come to them, and then press. I just thought it was very intriguing. It was very and this is a compliment. It was very start-stop, a lot of their play, and I think that makes them very unpredictable to play against. I do think they're going to be real challengers for the league next season. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they will be a good team next season, especially a pre-season under Thomas Tuchel will do everybody at the club a world of good, even players who are maybe out on loan at the moment or players in the youth team that he might look to bring through. Getting a month of just training with them, having practice games against other clubs will do them a lot of good. And potentially maybe selling a few players. They have a massive squad, Chelsea,
Yeah,
a really big squad. So they can afford to get rid of a few players. They can afford to get rid of a bit of dead wood. Yeah, I don't know who exactly. I've heard reports that um, that Borussia would look at Hudson-Odoi as a replacement for Sancho, were he to go. I think that could actually be a really good
I
signing
think it'll be a really good
from
signing as well.
all sides. I don't think
Yeah,
Hudson-Odoi is going to make it at Chelsea. I think he's kind of made his bed and he's lying in it now.
yeah.
I want to go. You're not going. Actually, I'll stay. Yeah, I think that's a bit of a mess. But Chelsea could sell and potentially, yeah, move on nicely. For me, I think it's hard not to just, like, I don't know if it's just because I love the man, but it is hard not to just give man of the match, in my opinion, to Kante.
He was fantastic
Kante,
tonight.
Kante, as we mentioned in the semi-final as well, just a really, really great player. As
Mm-hmm.
Tim and Carl in the chat earlier mentioned, give Kante the Ballon d'Or. I wouldn't go that far. Have you seen the year Messi's having? But Kante has been really, 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 really good. he just covers all ground, and it's not coincidental. Everybody on my Twitter timeline is saying Kante is the GOAT. Kante is the GOAT. Kante best player. As Mikey says in the chat here, Kante was different class.
He was.
You're
He was
absolutely right.
unbelievable. He was so good.
It's just his constant work rate, his constant work rate to get in the right area. His footballing brain is incredible. He knows what to do, and he has the physicality to make it happen. I like when he gets forward. I like when he gets to have a go in the other half. But what he does in his own half, or even in the early stages or of the other players, the other team's half, he does very well. Kante is my Luke Sherwin man of the match. Could
Fair
do
enough.
it on a cold, wet Wednesday night in Stoke City.
Totally fair. I was looking through his personal stats. 85% pass accuracy.
Better than
Uh,
Havertz, you love to see it.
Possession lost only 8 times.
Great.
Won 7 of 8 ground duels.
Not surprised.
Won 4 out of 7 aerial duels, and he's like 3'3", so that was pretty nuts.
Nice.
2 interceptions, 3 tackles, all round. An excellent display from Kante once again. And as you
Yeah.
said, he was fantastic against Real Madrid, certainly in the second leg anyway, from my memory. And he was superb again tonight. I can't argue with Kante being the man of the match from you, to be honest. I only give it to Kai Havertz because he scored, and
Yeah.
often that's what happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. In a game like tonight's, I think Kante was allowed to play really well,
mm,
and you kind of have to notice him. You have to pay attention to notice him. He won't necessarily stand out at all times because he
yep,
just does his job really well. He doesn't do anything flashy. He just tackles. And there's a reason Phil Foden said just in an interview that the most annoying player to play against is Kante. He was asked who's the most annoying defender to play against, and he says, "Well, he's not a defender. He's Kante."
yeah.
and that was evident tonight. Like
hmm
Foden almost looked scared of him anytime he got the ball. He'd like he didn't want to go towards Kante. So fair play, N'Golo Kante. You are a great man, and that's the 2021 Champions League final. That's the
Mm,
2021 Champions League campaign done and dusted. At the start of the season, if you had said to me Chelsea would win it, I would have told you were mad.
yep.
I don't think that was ever coming. I don't think anybody really predicted that, especially not with Frank Lampard. But Thomas Tuchel has done an incredible job. And before we maybe chat about Tuchel and Guardiola, we should probably shout out the referee.
Great game.
Really great game. Something that was really refreshing about tonight's game was how the ref let it play.
Oh, outstanding stuff. The advantages the ref played were so good, and what he did really well was you'd see a bit of an incident, right? And you could see him almost thinking about, right, I'm going to let this play out, and he'll take a second to see what was going on, and then he'd make a decision. And there was a load of times whenever there was a foul in the middle of the area somewhere, and he would look around, see how the thing was going, and then he'd often play advantage. In a game that was quite scrappy at times, he somehow allowed the game to keep flowing, and it was
Yeah,
just, as you said, extremely refreshing to see. Love
it
that from
was
him. Love that from him.
I think, very different because we were watching a Champions League final of two English teams. I think that's what made it really good. I think because the referee was not managing or refing like an English referee. Mikey says here, did you notice as well when Jorginho tried to win an Oscar, the ref told him to cop on, thought he did well. You're right there.
You're so
The
right,
ref
Maggie.
kind of apart from the one with Azpilicueta, where the ref absolutely decided he was fully on board with Azpilicueta's injury there and was like, quick, 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 get over, which I thought turned into Shinsuke Nakamura. But
Mm,
he was going nuts for that one. But in general, he wasn't taking any crap. He wasn't taking any crap
no.
at all. And he was letting the game run. He treated it like it was almost a Classico or a rivalry, a derby match, because he could see there's obviously going to be a few heated moments. It's a Champions League final. These players
Yeah.
all want this. This is their the pride and joy of their footballing career is to win the Champions League. And so the ref let it play. There were a few challenges that went in the Premier League. VAR would have had a look at them. Everybody would have been like, "Oh my word, is it a red card?" And the ref just let it play. And it was really nice to see. It
Mm,
almost felt like tackling was allowed to happen again tonight
yep.
after a season in which we've seen tackling become almost a dying art because anybody will go down at any opportunity.
Did you? We both loved. I think almost our favorite moment of the match. So Rudiger and Kevin De Bruyne have just clashed into each other, and Rudiger was rightly about to be booked. So the ref helps Rudiger up, and as he helps him up, he shows him a yellow card.
Yeah, it was great. Like no
Phenomenal,
wasted
phenomenal stuff.
motions. No
No,
wasted motions
that was
whatsoever.
so
Straight
good.
picks him up, yellow card. There you are. It was a good moment.
Fantastic.
Also a lovely moment from the ref. There was a moment when City had a shot and it hit off, I think, Reece James, hit his chest and then hit his arm, and the City
Yep.
players were all claiming for handball. If that had
Mhm.
happened at the start in September of 2020, well, at the start of the Premier League season, it would have been given. VAR would have
Yep.
given that. But I love the ref's conviction more than anything else. I love a ref that backs himself, and
Mhm.
VAR has almost made them doubt themselves a little bit more. It's a confidence thing again, it seems. It's like
Yeah.
refs are less confident in themselves. But this referee tonight, he knew what he wanted. He was like, no, chest, arm, chest, arm. I'm signaling, clearly communicating to the players, showing them what he thought his view was. And if VAR was to try and change that, he would have had a look. He would have gone over to the screen, seen, is this different to what I think it is? No, it's probably not, because he knew what he was watching. A really professional refereeing performance, one that was lovely to see. So shout out to the ref. You're my referee of the match. Well done. Could do it in a cold, wet Wednesday night in Stoke. You
We
love to
did
see
say
it.
we did say multiple times during the game that we thought he was fantastic. Like very, very rarely would I mention a referee's performance.
Yeah,
Um, and we said multiple times like, "Oh, this ref's been class tonight, been really, really good."
yeah,
Um, and I think that ultimately helped the game. I do. I think the refs' um, willingness to let the game play out did help the game in general. And I think had we seen another referee stopping it for every little thing, I think the game could have been awful. But he let it play out. In a game of this magnitude, there's always going to be physicality because you're literally playing for like probably the biggest competition, like apart from your domestic league. There's can't take it to get man of the match. I think.
oh,
Um,
what a guy.
so there you go. You love to see it, but yeah. After the game, the ref was very emotional as well. So he was crying. He knew he put in a shift. He knew it. He knew.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I
absolutely.
think I think the last thing we should really talk about before we finish up tonight is Thomas Tuchel and the outstanding job he's done at Chelsea since he arrived. Even when he came in, I would have laughed at you if you said, "Oh, now that he's in here, Chelsea are going to win the Champions League." I would have been like, "There's no way. Have you seen the state of that team? Like, there's no way he's going to come in." And then even some of the performances when he first came in, I remember in the FA Cup, which of course he took him to the final too as well. I think was it Barnsley they played, and they played a very dull 1-0 win, and I was like, "There's no like this is gonna be like Chelsea are gonna be boring." Chelsea were anything but boring tonight, and
Yeah,
we saw that with PSG. Obviously, PSG had one of the best attacks in Europe, and Tuchel used them magnificently, and that's what I was saying to you before. I feel like I mentioned it in the podcast before. I'm excited to see whenever when Tuchel properly focuses on this Chelsea attack, because I
yeah,
think he'll do an absolute madness with this Chelsea team. We've seen what he's done defensively. Christensen came on tonight for Thiago Silva, and he did really, really well. So you therefore know that he's going to do a job. Like that's your backup centre back.
yeah.
Yeah, as Mikey says, they're title contenders next year with a couple of signings. I think they could be title contenders next year, even if they don't get a couple of signings. Mikey, to be perfectly honest with you, this Chelsea team are superb. I honestly think they're
Yeah.
fantastic. Now, over a domestic season, yes, Mikey, they probably will need a couple of signings because that City squad is just next level. Um, but
I don't know about that.
but
I think they have a deep enough squad that's actually all right. Like they have two players to play in most positions.
yeah, but then Tuchel will probably win it next year. That gets sacked the following year. Well, that is the Chelsea way. But I
It
think
is.
I think I just think that City are another level when it comes to. Well, they certainly were this season. Um, because we saw it at the end of this season that Chelsea flaked a wee bit at the end. They showed signs of vulnerability. They didn't play up that well against Aston Villa and against the Villa team that, let's be honest, like aren't anywhere near the level of City. And they didn't look great against them. Um, I think next season's going to be really, really interesting because you're going to have, and I do hate to say this, you're going to have Liverpool are going to be right back up there. They're going to be right back up there because their
Yeah.
centre back is going to be back. You're going to have City probably again. You're going to have Chelsea, and if United make a couple of signings, those four teams, I think it's going to be a real. I think we're going to get an actual title race next year,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Well,
But
see, the thing with Chelsea, sorry, is he doesn't want to play five at the back.
yeah,
There's not one part of him that wants to play five at the back. He wants to play four at the back. But what he could recognize is that they just don't have the personnel for that.
mhm,
They didn't have the right centre back. So with a signing there, yes, absolutely. At centre back, it might be helpful because Reece James is cracker, Ben Chilwell is cracker,
yep,
and get a good centre back in there, even alongside Christensen, alongside Rudiger, alongside Zuma. If you put Virgil van Dijk in that defense, that's never going to happen, obviously. But if you put him alongside those players, I think it would make a massive difference. And then that changes everything going forward because then you can play Kai Havertz, you can play Pulisic, you can play Ziyech, and you can play a striker. I would love to see Tammy Abraham get a bit more time. I think Werner might work better if he's got somebody directly behind him in Havertz. So I think that is a exciting time to be a Chelsea fan. I expect a couple of signings, a few outgoings, and it could be good. What I love about Tuchel is his conviction as well. I've just been saying that about the ref. Mikey here says, then the likes of Leicester, Everton, West Ham, Arsenal, Spurs is shaping up to be a cracking year of football in the Premier League. I agree. I think next season looks really exciting. I think there's good things. Certain teams there like Arsenal and Spurs at the moment, what they lack is that conviction. I think I've just mentioned they haven't had a manager. Well, Spurs have Mourinho. Obviously, he does have a lot of conviction, but
mm,
Tuchel took his time. He experimented when he came in. He was like, "I'm going to play this system. Who's going to play for me? Who's going to work
yep,
in this system?" And he wasn't afraid to drop people. Tammy Abraham has a good goal scoring record this season. Tuchel said, "Nah, he doesn't work. Doesn't work for me. I'm not going to play him."
Giroud as
He's
well.
Yeah, Giroud had a really good goal scoring record as well. He's given Marcos Alonso a chance. He's given Hudson Odoi a chance. He gave
Yep,
players their opportunities, said, take these or else you're not playing. And they're not playing now. Those players aren't getting into the team. I love that from Tuchel. That's what we don't see from Arteta. It's what we don't see from Solskjaer. On Wednesday night, Solskjaer had a team and he refused to sub off players who were subpar, even because they're the big players. Even though they were really poor, even though Rashford wasn't good, even though Bruno Fernandes wasn't good, he didn't take them off because he doesn't have the conviction there. Whereas Thomas Tuchel, I imagine, would easily be like, "You're not playing well, Werner. Off you get." He showed that tonight. Abraham out the door in the summer, I think, for his sake. If
yep. He
he ever
has to
wants to
go.
get back in the England squad, if he ever wants to score goals regularly in the Premier League, I don't think he's starting at Chelsea. I think, yeah, Tuchel's not a massive fan, but that could change. As a pre-season with Chelsea, a chance to impress him in pre-season friendlies. Who knows? Anything can really happen there. But fair play, Thomas Tuchel. Another really good performance from your players, getting the best out of your team. It's nice to see. Congratulations for winning the Champions League this year. Yeah. Pep, on the other hand, I don't know what happened tonight. I think he set up slightly wrong. I'll not ever hear the argument that Pep is a fraud. Like people, Liverpool fans mainly. Yeah, yeah, you do have to be. I thought you were telling me personally that I had to have that conviction and be cutthroat. Like just kicked you off the stream here or something. I read that wrong. I was like, "What's Mikey telling me to do?" Like me personally. Um, People, Liverpool fans especially, are coming at Phil Foden, are coming at Pep Guardiola. As we've discussed many times, Liverpool fans are the most unbearable human beings in the world. But
What
they
days?
they've come out tonight and said he's a fraud. He spent 1 billion, hasn't won the Champions League. I will not have that at all. Like, yes, well done, Liverpool. You have won that. You beat a terrible Spurs team in the final. If City were playing that Spurs team in the final, they would have won 5-0 tonight. Do you know? It's
Mm.
a completely different. It's a completely different scenario, and we had two really good teams up against each other tonight, and it was great to see. Phil Foden. Anybody that slavers out Phil Foden, like, what are you doing? Why would you like Phil Foden is a delight to watch. I don't support City. I'm not a City fan, but watching Phil Foden is exciting. Thank you, Mikey. Glad that you agree with me there. I have the conviction on this one. I'm cutthroat, just as you asked me to be. Liverpool fans, insufferable. But Phil Foden, a delightful footballer. We'll give him that.
Yeah, and I think, look, you can't question Guardiola with the record he's had. He was probably rightly accused of being a bit cocky last year's Champions League with Lyon and losing that game. Wasn't it Lyon?
Yeah,
I think those accusations were probably fair. I think he probably thought I can rest a few players. Oh, looking ahead, and he did make a mistake there. Tonight, I think he saw an opportunity to go at Chelsea. Um, I think BT Sports spoke about he maybe saw what Leicester did against Chelsea, and he saw a vulnerability there. But I wouldn't call him. He's one of the best coaches ever and in the world. So
yeah,
yeah, like I get it. People say, "Oh, he only does well because he only manages big teams. He's got all the best players." But you have to be a certain type of manager to be able to manage all these egos in one area and get them working as a team.
yeah.
And we saw what they did this season. You can't, you can't really ever go at them, to be honest.
No, yeah, absolutely. And before we just wrap up, Kante confirmed as man of the match, which means he's been man of the match now in both legs of the semi-final and the final. He's done
That's
3
enough.
in a row in the Champions League. Kante showing his quality under Tuchel towards the end of the season, which is really impressive. Some of you listening might be wondering, look, Joe, what are your thoughts on the playoff final today? And if you want to know, check us out on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify because we will talk about that in the introduction. So if you want to hear our thoughts about the playoff final, check out the introduction, the first 10 or so minutes on our podcast, on all our podcast providers, and we will chat through our thoughts on Brentford versus Swansea and how excited we are to see a certain team potentially playing in the Premier League next season. It's been a pleasure, Joe, to chat through the Champions League final. What a game. A really fun game
So
from a
good.
neutral standpoint. Really nice to see. And hopefully one day, Joe, Stoke City and Newcastle United will face each other in the Champions League final. That's all I want. That's all I want.
We'll be doing this podcast when we're 75, and it'll be Newcastle versus Stoke, and we'll do live reactions in our full gear, and
Full
all that.
kit.
And that,
Yeah.
it'll be unbelievable. What a day! What a
Shin
day it'll
pads and
be.
everything in the living
Yeah,
room.
totally.
Great.
And we'll
Great.
be able
But
to
no,
watch it together.
we'll be live at the game. I would like to think if
Mm,
Newcastle played Stoke, we would try our best to go.
yeah, yeah,
But there
absolutely.
we are.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. We managed to somehow drag this out to like 55 minutes, which I'm actually really impressed with us for doing so. Good job. So
A lot of thoughts.
because of tonight's show, there will be no Sunday show tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll be back again on Wednesday, do you think, Luke? Probably Wednesday this week to do a Premier League Team of the Season episode where we'll talk through our Team of the Season. But before we go, we've got one last question from Mikey. He says, if you had to call it now, lads, who's winning the league, getting top 4 and getting relegated? And my answer is find out on Wednesday in Wednesday's Premier League discussion show, because that is what we'll talk about. I don't know. I don't want to repeat myself.
Shocking.
I don't
Such a
want to repeat
tease,
myself.
Joe. Such a tease.
No, but it was in the plan. It was in the plan because
It was.
Wednesday's show is going to be Team of the Season and a discussion about everything that Mikey's just said there in that question. So you don't want to miss that. Wednesday night, I don't know what time yet. I'll let you know. Probably 8 o'clock if we can do it at 8. We'll see what happens. Maybe later, maybe earlier. I don't know. we'll need to chat about it. But we will see you then. Until then, look after yourselves, stay safe, be good. And I just want to finish with one last thing, and that's Luke celebrating what a great game of football that was.
What a guy! What a
What a
guy!
guy. What a guy.
Scenes that
Yeah.
never made the light of day because they were recorded as an intro.
Oh, rip.
Shocking.
Okay. Right.
Lovely stuff.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right,
Thank you so
guys. See you
much.
later.